Hello everybody, I am so excited to finally share my birth story today. I have been meaning to share this for a long time, but honestly, I, number one, had to find the time to do this, being a new mom, but number two, I just really want to articulate it the best that I can because it truly was an experience that I will never forget. I don't think many people forget their births, especially their first births, but I just truly wanted to sit with my experience for a little bit to reflect on it, and I journaled about it first and I wrote it all down. And I do feel like that was really good for me to do first because then I really feel like I have a good grasp on the whole story. But my son was 9 weeks old yesterday, so I gave birth 9 weeks ago, and I'm finally ready to share my birth story. So I'm not going to detail too much about my pregnancy in this video. I have a first, second, and third trimester recap video. If you guys want to go check that out, go look at it. If you're interested in hearing details about my pregnancy, I do detail a lot of it. They're kind of long, I'm not going to lie. They're like mini movies, but I think that's the whole point because then people can get the full experience and then I can look back and watch them. But to sum it up, I had a very nice pregnancy. I felt like it was very good to me physically. Truly, everything was healthy with me, with my baby, and that's all I could really ask for. But I will detail a little bit of the ending in here. So starting around 36 weeks, I was getting cervical checks and nothing was really happening. I wasn't really progressing. My body really wasn't ready for labor. I was like 1 centimeter dilated and about 40 to 50% effaced at my very first cervical check at 36 weeks. And I wasn't going to get cervical checks every single week, but then things kept happening midweek that made me want to kind of check it out a little bit. Like, for example, I lost my mucus plug. So that made me wonder if things were maybe happening. I felt different, like crampy feelings, new feelings would come up that made me think, I kind of want to get checked and see if I'm progressing anymore. And each week I was about the same, 1 to 1.5-ish centimeters dilated, 40 to 50% effaced. My cervix was still really high, not very soft. So truly my body wasn't ever really ready to give birth. And that's kind of important to note because going into my first birth, I really did not want an induction. I had a pretty good open mind about how my birth was going to go. I just really wanted to avoid an induction and specifically a C-section. My mom and my sister both only had C-sections. My mom had 2, my sister had 3. So for me, in my mind, I just thought that that was my path. I thought that's what was going to happen for me. I wanted to avoid it because I knew that from both of their experiences, the recovery of a C-section is just not easy. You know, they both told me about how difficult it was for a couple of weeks having this brand new baby and then also the major surgery you just underwent. So in my mind, I really wanted to avoid that. And that was really my main goal for my birth, is that I wanted my body to go into labor naturally and I wanted to deliver vaginally. And I think that's pretty much everybody's goal. I don't think anybody goes into it wanting a C-section, but that was kind of my thought at the time. I also, before going into giving birth, I really didn't want an epidural. I wanted to try to do it without an epidural. And really, hindsight's 2020, looking back in it, the reason I didn't want that is kind of for my own ego. I kind of wanted to be able to say, I did this naturally, and that's important to note for later on in my birth story, but I just kind of wanted to lay out some of my expectations. I did a lot of work with like hypnobirthing, and I'm someone who's a fan of meditating, so I really meditated a lot at the end of my pregnancy, specifically when I would take my baths, my Epsom salt baths. I would just sit with my thoughts and kind of meditate and connect with my body about my birth. And one of the things that I did a lot during those was I pushed away a lot of fear. And so I really felt fearless going into birth. But the other thing I did was really think about what I wanted out of my birth. And I wanted to go into labor naturally, no epidural, and no C-section. And you will hear how those things play into my birth story as I get into it. My birth story really starts on my due date, Monday, March 24th, and if you watch my 3rd trimester recap video, I had my 40-week OB appointment. We did a membrane sweep because things just weren't happening, like I said. And then I went home, and I in that video you can see I feel very defeated. Like I kind of am just like in a funk, and that was because we were starting to talk about an induction, and I just didn't want that. But I had no idea what was about to happen that very night. I also detailed in that video that I mentioned to my doctor I thought I was possibly leaking some fluid, but I didn't know because it was like little drops that felt like a little bit more than normal, but I just didn't know I don't know what was normal. I've never been pregnant before. I've never been 40 weeks pregnant before, and I've never been pregnant like possibly leaking amniotic fluid. I just had no idea. So I mentioned it to them. They tested the fluid right there at my 40-week appointment. The strip test was negative for fluid. And I said that in my video. I'm like, oh, I'm not leaking fluid, which is the good thing. But my doctor also sent a sample off to labs just because sometimes there can be such a tiny leak that it won't pick up on the strip test. And my doctor's like, I just want to be extra sure because even a tiny little leak could risk infection for you and for baby. And I'm happy he did that because at about 9:30, 10 p.m., I got the results that were sent to lab that day that it was positive for amniotic fluid. And as I have an app on my phone that will send you like lab results and stuff like that. And as I'm looking at this lab result, I'm thinking, so what does this mean? I was literally sitting in my nursery right here on my rocking chair thinking, am I going in tonight? Like, am I going to have this baby like tonight or tomorrow? And as I'm kind of sitting with my thoughts before I could even really go talk to Al, I'm getting a call on my phone, and it came from no caller ID. And I typically don't answer stuff like that, but I was thinking maybe it's the doctor's office or maybe it's my doctor. And it was my doctor. I think he was on like his personal phone because I think that's why it came through no caller ID. And he was like, hey, Brooke. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, he told me, it's Dr. Gantz. And by the way, I love my doctor. I just want to lay that out right now. And you'll hear about how much I love my doctor as the story goes on. But absolutely love him. He has the softest, most gentle voice. And he's like, did you see the result? And I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at it right now. And I'm like, what does this mean? And he goes, I think you should go in tonight. I let them know you were coming. I let labor and delivery know you're coming. He's like, you're 40 weeks pregnant. We don't really have a reason to keep baby in at this point. And he said, there are false positives, but if this is truly fluid that you're leaking, we just want to make sure that you're not getting an infection that we don't know about and that baby is not. And I agreed with him. You know, as much as I didn't want to be induced, I agreed that this was kind of a medical reason to do so. So it was a bit of a surprise induction. My induction was scheduled for the following week. Monday, March 31st was when we had an induction scheduled just in case baby didn't come on his own. And my whole plan that whole week was to get baby to come on his own. So getting a call at 10 p.m. that you're going to go in and be induced was definitely not anything I ever thought would happen, but it was. Okay, sorry for the little pause. My son had to eat. But I came out into the living room and told my husband that we're going in right now. And he's like, right now? Like, we were both just so shocked because yes, it was an induction, but it was definitely a surprise to us. Like, we didn't think it was going to happen that night and the way that it did. And we had already had a few things packed, but we were going to kind of wait to pack more. There's just like stuff like hygiene and stuff like that we weren't really planning on packing until it was go time. So now it was definitely go time. We were packing up our stuff. He called his mom to come over. We have 2 dogs. And we could have left them, but he called her. She was still awake. So here's one of them right now. So she came over and got the dogs. And at this point now, it was like 11:15, 11:20 p.m. And me and my husband look at each other and we're like, should we wait till after midnight to go in? I mean, I guess we're kind of cheap. You can call us cheap. The way medical bills are these days, we did not want to risk getting charged an extra day if we go in before midnight. And because I wasn't like actively in labor in pain, we waited till after midnight. So we get there. Our truck is full of stuff. I brought so much stuff to the hospital, but that's okay. I don't regret it. I don't regret having my fan and all my comfort stuff. But we get there, we check in, they give us our room, they give me my gown, and I felt kind of dumb, but she hands me the gown and I'm like, do I take everything off underneath? Like, I didn't know. It was just such a first time mom moment. She's like, yeah, you can take your bottoms off. I'm going to be checking you and getting things going. But people typically like to leave like a bra or a bralette on. So she checked my cervix and nothing had changed. I was still like 1.5 centimeters, 40 to 50% effaced. She hooked up baby's heart monitor and my contraction monitor. I actually was having very mild contractions and I could feel them on the way to the hospital, but it was nothing like what I thought a contraction was. It was just very, very mild cramping. So I had probably been having mild spaced out contractions for a couple of days, if not weeks. I could kind of tell you that I was feeling that. But then they started me on a pill to get my cervix soft and kind of get it ready for birth because like I said, my body was not ready to give birth. And they actually put the pill in my cheek. They usually put it in the cervix, but because I was possibly leaking fluid, they didn't want to risk it not working. So they put it in my cheek overnight, and then I went to bed. I probably went to bed at like 2:30 or 3 in the morning. Then I wake up probably like 6:30, and they check, and they said my cervix was not any more dilated, but it was softer and lower. So that was good. It meant the pill was kind of doing what it was supposed to do. But then at around 7 a.m., they started me on Pitocin. So this is Tuesday now, March 25th, 2025, that they started me on Pitocin. As soon as they started me on that, I started feeling some contractions, but they were light, not super close together, nothing I couldn't just breathe through and manage. It definitely did start out like period cramps. So I do think for me that was accurate when people say that they kind of start off like period cramps because I felt like mine did, but it wasn't anything super painful. I remember we put on Star Wars, we just kind of hung out in the hospital and I felt really good. I was able to like do a little bit of makeup and stuff. I genuinely thought my baby was coming that day, if not soon. Boy, was I wrong. But I did a little bit of makeup, kind of brushed my hair, brushed my teeth, kind of got myself ready while I was still feeling good. And I just kind of labored throughout the day. My mom came up and we had decided beforehand that my mom and my husband were both going to be kind of support people for me during my labor. And that was really nice because having my mom and my husband there, they are the two people that probably bring me the most comfort. So having those two people there to kind of literally and figuratively hold me through my labor was really awesome, really important for me to have that. And as the hours ticked on, contractions kind of kicked up a little bit more and a little bit more each hour, but it was still nothing that I couldn't breathe through, and you know, getting into different positions really helped me. I know one for sure was just like standing up and walking around felt really good at this stage of my labor. I loved to walk around. They did bring out a birthing ball and I was really excited for that. But the birthing ball was super low to the ground and it was really squishy. So for me, it was not very comfortable because I felt like I was almost like squatting, which some people like, but for me, it just wasn't the best. I have a birthing ball here. Well, it's not really called a birthing ball. It's just an exercise ball, but mine is super firm and I wish I would have brought mine, because theirs was just not very comfortable. So sitting on that was not my favorite, but just like standing and swaying. I remember I stood and swayed a lot. That felt really good. And as contractions started to pick up even more, I decided that I wanted to go in the tub. And I knew I wanted to labor in the tub because the tub was my happy place my whole pregnancy, and I know that tubs relax me. So I got into the tub. Luckily, we had one in our suite. And it was amazing. You could adjust like the light above it, and I had this blue light shining down, and it was exactly what I wanted for my labor. I wanted that relaxing atmosphere. And the tub was absolutely my happy place during labor. It was so relaxing to sit, and the water was so warm. It was so warm inside the bathroom. And my mom and my husband both came, they brought chairs in there and they just sat in there. And even just listening to them talk just relaxed me so much. I laid my head back, I closed my eyes, and as the contractions started to get more intense, I would push my feet against the back of the tub, and that kind of counter resistance felt really good when I was having a contraction. Like that was my sweet spot right there. And I was breathing through it, and I felt like everything was going really well. I truly felt in control of my body, my contractions, and they definitely started to pick up. Like I started to have to breathe through them a lot, but like I said, the tub was great, and just I fell asleep a few times even, and I've heard people talk about this, like falling asleep in between contractions and taking like even the shortest little 4 or 5 minute cat nap, and I was doing that, and it felt really good. And having that distraction of my mom and my husband just like talking about current events, just whatever. They were just having a conversation, but listening to their voices was so soothing to me. So it was now about 2 p.m. So I had been on Pitocin and laboring since about 7 a.m. Now it's 2 p.m. and they get me out of the tub so they can check me. And I'm really excited to get checked. I was genuinely so excited to get checked because I felt like I was having very progressive contractions and I felt things amping up. I got out of the tub and the nurse checked me, and I was at 3 centimeters. And I remember Al and my mom and the nurse were like, "Oh, great, you're at 3 centimeters." And, you know, my mom and Al were really excited, and I was not. I felt like, okay, I had kind of been at this for a good part of the day, and we're only at 3? Like, how long is this going to take? It hit me then that I'm going to have a long labor, because I thought maybe we would be at like a 5 or a 6. And, you know, I had never been through labor before, but I had felt like my contractions were painful and getting more and more painful. So I was just hoping to be a little bit further along. But in my mind, I'm like, okay, 3 is something. It's better than 1.5 that I've been at for the past month. I just continued on with what I was doing. I got right back in the tub, and I remember even my doctor came to say hi to me, and I was in the tub, and I could hear them from outside the bathroom door, and he's like, "Oh, if she's in there, I'm not going to bother her." Even though I would have loved it if he came in, because he calms me down so much. But my contractions picked up a lot. They were getting incredibly intense and very close together. It started to feel like I wasn't getting a break, because that was one thing so far in labor that I really liked, is that yes, it would get painful, right? Like it would get to the point where I'd have to close my eyes and breathe through it. But then there was that release, you know, there was that feeling of, okay, I can like relax again. And that was when I was falling asleep and stuff. But now it got to a point where I wasn't getting that relaxation. I wasn't getting that relief. They were just, one contraction would end and another one would start right back up. And I just kind of felt like it was starting to get very painful. I started to feel very out of my own body. I started to lose control of my breath and of my zen that I created in the bathtub. And I was shaking a lot. I was trying to drink water. I was trying to breathe, but nothing was working for me. The tub was still the closest thing to feeling relaxed, but even then it just started to get really intense. I actually got out of the tub because I felt like I was going to throw up. I was over a garbage can, like ready to go. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, kind of with my body kind of draped over Al. I'm not going to be able to demonstrate this, but I was squeezing him so tightly. He stood up then, and I kind of put my arms like around his waist and sat at the edge of the bed, and that felt kind of nice, but I felt like I was losing control really fast. And if you ask my husband, he will tell you he's never seen that side of me because I wasn't yelling, but I was like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. I was just getting really, really worked up, and it was definitely not a feeling I liked. In my mind, thus far in my life, I would consider that 10 out of 10 pain. It was the most pain I've ever been in my entire life. It was just really intense, really strong, my contractions they started to feel like they were never letting up, which is the worst feeling ever. And it is now about 7 p.m. So I had been on Pitocin having contractions for about 12 hours now. Was kind of hoping that, my baby would be coming soon. But my doctor then came in to check me at about 7 p.m., like I said. And I was like, okay, I've got to be like there. In my mind, I'm thinking, if I'm there and we can start pushing soon, like, I'm going to push through this. My doctor checked me. I was still at 3 centimeters. 3 centimeters. And I had been at this all day. And I just started sobbing. I started crying. And you have to lay down when they check you, and laying on my back was the worst position to be in. And these contractions were just still happening so strong. And I was just like, I felt so defeated. I was like, I cannot do this. Like, in my mind, if I was almost there, that would have been like a huge motivation for me. Like, okay, yes, I'm in like 10 out of 10 pain, but we're doing this. He's going to be here soon. I think that was what I needed to hear in that moment to make me feel better and to keep going through this labor the way I had been going through it. But to hear that I'm still at 3 centimeters, I'm thinking, I have a whole day of this left, and I wasn't far off from thinking that. But my doctor he's just so calming, and he was right by me. He came down by my head, and he's like, what do you want to do? I can request an epidural for you. And he knew that my goal was to stay calm during my birth. I wanted that calmness that I had back in the beginning when I was in the tub. And I just said, I didn't want to do this, but I said, I don't know how much more I can take. And he said something to me that I will never forget, and this was literally the turning point in my labor. He said to me, every labor is different. Your labor is a marathon, not a sprint. And that just like clicked in my head. I remember thinking about how long I had been at this and how long I still had left. And I was like, I need my energy for the end. There's no way I'm going to be able to sleep tonight if this is the kind of contractions that I'm having. I was just like sobbing, and I felt so defeated, but I went through with it, and he ordered the epidural for me. And I felt so defeated. I remember thinking, like, this is exactly how I didn't want my birth to go. I didn't want to be induced, for one. Well, that happened. I didn't want the epidural, and now that's happening. And it was honestly, it was a pride thing. I had to put my pride to the side and just really look at what was actually happening, what was right in front of me. And that's the biggest thing I'll take into my next birth, is to really judge what's happening in the moment and to stop having these preconceived plans for what I want to happen. And so it felt like forever until the anesthesiologist came in. It was probably only about 30 minutes, but it felt like forever because these contractions were just brutal. And finally they came in. And the guy, he was so funny. He was so nice. He's like, I'm going to tell you a bunch of things that I have to tell you before I do this. And I know fully that you are not listening to me. So just nod or whatever you want to do. And so he's giving his whole spiel. And I'm just like on the edge of the bed, just like breathing, crying, doing everything. But they put you on the bed. They have to raise the bed all the way up. Al was able to be in the room when I got my epidural placed, but he couldn't be very close to me, so he couldn't be like holding my hand or anything like that. He had to sit kind of in a chair across the room. I had one nurse in between my legs and the other nurse next to me rubbing my hand. She got me a Kleenex, was wiping my tears because tears were just flowing. And both of these nurses were nominated for Daisy Awards by me because they literally held me through my labor and wiped my tears. And you have to relax when you're getting the epidural, and I was so tense from these contractions. So I had the nurse, she was in between my legs and she was pushing my shoulders down because you have to relax. And that was like the last thing I could do was relax. And you have to bend way far forward. And I had this big, giant, beautiful belly that is amazing, but not when you have to get into the position. And you also can't be having a contraction, but I felt like mine were constant. And the poor anesthesiologist had to keep changing his gloves because I had my hair up like in a high pony. And every time I would get that contraction, I would like whip my head back and my hair would touch his gloves, and he had to keep changing his gloves. And I heard him say at one point, like, okay, I got to change my gloves. Like, her hair hit my gloves. And then I realized, like, oh, I should probably stop whipping my head back. But he was so kind. He didn't like tell me that. He was just kind of telling the nurses. And my poor mother, like I said, my mother was a support person for me. So my mom actually left to go get something to eat and to kind of take a little bit of a breather. And when she left, I was still in a pretty calm state. And this poor woman came back into the room, opened the door as they were like placing my epidural. And I'm like sobbing on the table and just a completely different person than when she had left. My mom was like, I had to walk out. I couldn't see you like that. And now that I am a mother, like, I get it. I feel so bad for her having to come in and see me like that, because I was not myself, and I was certainly not the calm, laboring woman that I was when she left. But once my epidural was placed, for me, it was instant relief. And honestly, the epidural getting placed did not hurt me at all. It honestly hurt me more just him touching my sides to like feel where to place it, because I was so tense. I was tensing my jaw, my shoulders, every muscle in my body was so tense that him just gently touching me was excruciating. And I've never experienced that in my entire life. I've never had just someone's touch be so painful, but it was because of how tense I was. But my epidural was placed beautifully. It did not hurt at all. It was instant relief. I felt all of the pressure, but none of the pain. So I could still feel things, and that's what I wanted. Like, I wanted to feel in control of my body. I could still move around. I didn't walk from that point on, but I could move like in the bed. So I could switch positions. I could kind of switch from side to side, do different things that felt good for me. And that was all I really wanted at the end of the day. So now it is Tuesday night and I am so relaxed from this epidural. I remember my mom stayed for a little bit, and her and Al we kind of put on movies, and I was dozing in and out, which was great for me. I needed that sleep, and they were just kind of watching movies, talking, checking in on me, but I was able to get some really good sleep. And I was sleeping in a position they had the peanut ball in between my legs, it just kind of felt like a comfy pillow in between my legs. That was super, super comfortable for me. And I slept on and off that whole night. They came in to check me like every 2 hours. And, I have to mention something incredibly important. Once they placed my epidural, they put a catheter in, which I didn't feel at all and was definitely necessary. But they also put an internal contraction monitor in that actually slips past baby's head. And the reason they did this is because my contraction monitor on my belly, they kept losing the reading from it. And throughout my whole labor, they kept coming in and like adjusting my contraction monitor because they weren't reading any contractions. And they're like, we know you're having them, but we just can't see them. And I remember thinking, like, is it because I'm in the tub? And I asked them, I'm like, am I okay to be in the tub with all this stuff on me? They're like, no, you're totally fine. Like, everything is totally fine in the water. The only thing is that eventually I had to turn the jets off because the jets were interfering with baby's heart monitor. And that was fine. The jets felt nice, but it was just being in the tub that felt the best. But as soon as they got my contraction monitor in and were actually reading my contractions consistently, the nurse was like, oh boy, we need to turn down your Pitocin. And I was kind of like, what? I didn't know what was going on. And she actually called my doctor and asked if she could take me off of Pitocin because my dosage was too high. It was giving me incredibly intense and close together contractions, which was very validating for me to hear because I just couldn't believe how strong these contractions were. And there's like a contraction monitor that you can see, and it looks like waves. Like there's like, you can see one come and go. Mine, when she got the accurate contraction monitor, they were like mountain peaks and like overlapping. She said that I was actually having contractions that were coupling, which means there was like contraction, contraction, contraction without any relief. And as much as this was kind of a bummer to hear because this could have been fixed had we known this sooner. It was also extremely validating because I was just like beside myself in pain and wondering what was going on. Like, do I have a really low pain tolerance or what's going on? And the nurse explained to me that this is the reason why I was still at a 3. She said, because when your body is having these unnaturally strong contractions, your cervix will not respond to them because nothing that's was happening was natural. Obviously, Pitocin is not natural. It's something that gives you contractions. And so once they took me off, they kind of let my body reset a little bit. Then they put me back on the Pitocin and the right dosage that was actually giving me these very productive contractions, because the ones I was having before were actually counterproductive. They were making my cervix just stop. And once they got me on this right dosage overnight on Tuesday, I progressed extremely fast. I went from a 5 to a 7 to a 9 in the matter of like 6 hours. And this really makes me wonder, had we found this sooner, if he would have been born Tuesday because of how fast I progressed. So here we are. It is now Wednesday morning, March 26th, and it's like 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and Al was sleeping on the couch next to me, and I remember waking him up and going like, babe, I'm at a 9, and he was like, what? Like, because when he went to bed, I was at like a 3 or a 5. I can't remember which one he remembers hearing, but he thought that we had a whole nother day of this left. So to wake up and to hear that I'm at a 9 and that they were like getting stuff ready for us to start pushing, this was really exciting for me. This was really motivating for me. I was like, okay, yes, this is happening. This is great. And I let my mom know. I was like, if you want to come say hi before he's born, you better come now. Fun fact, he was not born until 2:30. So we still have more to this story. But my doctor came in the morning and he was so excited to see that I was already at a 9. I told Al, I'm like, go get coffee, go eat something. Like, this is going to be here soon. And then at 9 centimeters, I developed a cervical lip, which makes total sense because of how long I had been at this. My body was just starting to get a little exhausted. So my cervix was swollen a little bit, which actually kind of causes it to close. Like, your cervix isn't closing, but obviously if it's at a 9 and then it swells, there's less room going on there. And they also discovered that baby was sunny side up, which means he was coming out like looking up, and they like them to come out looking down. So at this point, my doctor put me in a bunch of different positions. I was like on my hands and knees, not my like hands, but I was over a ball on the bed on my knees to try to get him to flip, and also to try to get that lip to swell, or that lip to go down, the swelling to go down. And he came back in and checked me again and again, and I was still there. It was the lip put me at like 9.5. I was probably at a 10 at this point, but because I developed the cervical lip, it was putting me at like a 9.5. And he explained to me, he's like, if this was your second or third pregnancy, if you had children before, we could probably push past that lip. He can put his hand in and like hold it back essentially. But he said with it being my very first baby, my very first delivery, he did not want to push my body. He did not want to do any damage to my cervix. And I really appreciate that, because we definitely want more babies. And I would have been really sad, if something would have happened to my cervix. It's kind of important. But it wasn't going down. It wasn't going down. And I was trying he was trying everything in his power. So then he comes in at 11 a.m. and checks me. I'm still at that 9.5 with that lip. And he said, okay, I'm going to come back at noon. And if it is still there, I really think we should do a C-section. And he knew I didn't want that. He doesn't want that for me either. But he explained to me, like, your body has been at this for so long. Your body's exhausted. Even if you don't feel like you're exhausted, your body is exhausted. And I was not happy to hear that, but I always appreciate him putting my health first. So at this point, I did everything I could to spiritually get this cervical lip to go away. I was manifesting, I was praying, I was meditating, I was breathing down. I wanted to push everything down. That was like my whole mindset, was like down. Like I wanted everything to come out and down. And he had an appointment, so he ended up being a little bit late, but about 12:30 he came back and checked me. and I was just holding my breath, and I was ready to like fight him. I would never truly fight my doctor, but I was ready to advocate and be like, can we just give it a little more time? But when he checked me, he was like, oh man, baby's head is really low. Baby's head has moved past your cervix. So that either means that the swelling went away and I opened up and baby's head came through, or baby's head just pushed through that lip on its own. Because when he felt him, he's like, all right, baby's head is down. We are ready to push. And I literally saw angels around my doctor's head as he was saying that. I think I like looked at him and I was like, really? Because I was just in my head, I was thinking, this is it. Like, I'm going to have a C-section and I'm going to feel that defeat all over again that I felt with the epidural. And that's so backwards, because it's definitely, none of this is a defeat, but I came in with these expectations for myself that I kind of wish I didn't have. So at about 1-ish, we started pushing, and it was so funny because my doctor was like, I know you don't want to hear this right now, but I'm gonna go get something to eat really quick. And I'm like, go. I was telling all the nurses, I was telling Al, my doctor, I was like, everybody, go get something to eat, go get coffee, go do whatever you have to do, go have a cigarette, I don't care. Then we started pushing, and it was just I just can't even describe how amazing my actual delivery was, the pushing. It was so incredible. I felt so in charge. Like I said, I could feel all of the pressure. I could actually feel the urge to push. I think it's called a fetal ejection reflex. I felt that big time. Every time a contraction was coming, I felt that urge to push. And I could really feel how low baby's head was. Hi, Maymay. I could absolutely feel how low it was. It felt like his head was sticking out of me the whole time, and it definitely wasn't, but it was so low in the birth canal that it felt like it was. And I remember thinking, like, if I were to get up and sit in a chair right now, I'd be sitting on his head. I felt how low his head was, and I really felt in control of my pushes. I was trying different things. I tried to hum during one of my pushes because I felt the urge to vocalize, and I told my doctor, I was like, can I hum? Like, I feel like I need to make noise, but I don't want to be like screaming. Like, I want it to be controlled. And he's so great. He's like, try anything, do it. I ended up not liking the humming because I felt like it was taking some of my energy away from pushing down, but I really felt so in control. Every push felt very productive, very progressive. I felt just amazing. I had Al on one side, a nurse on the other, helping me so much, and my doctor actually had to keep leaving and coming back for appointments. I was pushing for like an hour and a half, so he had a couple of different appointments, and it was cool because every time he would come back, he'd be like, wow, like progress. Like, he could see how much progress I was making, which was really cool. And like I had mentioned, baby was sunny side up, so while I was pushing, my doctor was trying different things to try to turn him, and nothing was really working. But then as we were getting really, really close, they had Al gown up because we had decided that if everything went how we wanted it to go, that Al was going to catch our baby. That was really important to us. I just thought that, I carried him for the last 40 weeks, 40 plus 2 at this point, and I just wanted him to be born right into his dad's hands because I wanted him to then carry our baby into the world. That was really important to me, and so I was really excited when they're like, okay, Dad, here's a gown, do you want gloves? They had me actually push with my knees in, ankles out, and I was super excited when they said that because I had been practicing this position on my exercise ball, so I was like ready to go, and that's why I totally recommend doing pelvic floor exercises and everything, because this truly helped me when I had to get into this position. I knew I was so comfortable in this position. And once I did that, it just opened my hips up and they were able to turn baby as I was pushing. And so as soon as he was in that optimal position, he came right out, and it was just so amazing. I have an audio of his birth. We didn't have a video, but I did have my phone recording voice memos next to me. And it was just, I love listening to it because you can hear everybody literally cheering as he came out. He was born at 2:36 p.m. on March 26th, and he was just absolutely perfect. I'll never forget Al holding him up, and I could see him. He had so much hair, it looked so dark, and he had great coloring. I was expecting him to be a little more purplish, I don't know, but he was nice and bright red, pink, beautiful, fresh baby color, and he let out these little raspy cries, and I love listening to that in the audio. And he definitely had a cone head. You could tell he was in the birth canal for a little bit, but he was just perfect, and he was born right into his daddy's hands, and then they put him on me, and from then on I just fell in love with my little boy. I mean, I truly fell in love with him while I was pregnant, but having him looking up at me, he looked up at me right away. I thought he looked just like his dad. And yeah, our son Arthur Joseph was born absolutely perfect, and my delivery was everything I needed to end strong. It was the delivery of my dreams. It was perfect. I felt so empowered. I felt so rooted for. Like, I felt like I had all these cheerleaders in the room and outside of the room. You know, Al was giving out updates when he could. I felt so wonderful. I felt so in control. I felt high. I wanted to do it again. I was laughing. I was joking with Al that I was like, let's do this again. Let's do this again. And my doctor laughed at that because he's like, yeah, about 5 minutes after your baby was born, you were talking about wanting another one. So I think I'll see you guys again soon. And I just want to say that without the epidural, I would not have had that experience. So looking back, the epidural was absolutely the right option for me because, for one, it really allowed me to relax and conserve all of that energy for the end. And I needed that. I needed that to have that delivery of my dreams, to have that beautiful, calm, controlled delivery. I was just so myself. We were laughing, we were joking, we were talking like normal. It was wonderful. And so the epidural was the right choice for me. And I think that you have to look at your labor as your own individual experience. And that was where I went wrong in the beginning, as I was thinking about what I wanted my labor to be. But my labor was perfect because it was mine, and it was a marathon. It was not a sprint. It was a long, beautiful marathon, but it was all just totally worth it. And I want to do it again. Next time will definitely be a little different. We'll see if I have to be induced or not. That's going to definitely change everything. Yeah, I hope I didn't leave anything out. It was a long, intense, but beautiful, beautiful experience. And I look forward to doing it again. I really do. I felt high from it. I want to do it again. But thank you so much for listening to my birth story. It was definitely the most amazing experience of my life so far. And I'm really attached to my birth. I'm very attached to this feeling and this experience. And I will always have these fond memories of my doctor and my support people, Al and my mom and the nurses, who are just incredible, amazing people. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I don't know what videos we'll have coming out in the future, but I hope you stick around for more.